together for our tour today. How many folks from the city PHR do we have on board? Wow, over half. Okay, so there's a large contingent from the City of Portland Bureau of Human Resources on board the tour, and then how many folks are from the general public? Would you raise your hand? Okay. So what we typically do, one of the first stops where we get off the bus and actually go for a short hike, we'll kind of form a semicircle, and then we'll go quickly around the circle and introduce ourselves, just say our name and who we're affiliated with, if you're a member of the general public or a member of the city PHR, and any other remarks that you'd like to add, just so I kind of know who my audience is. So my name is Richard Robbins, and I worked a 30-year career for the Water Bureau. I retired at the end of 2013, so I've been retired a little over 3.5 years. So they brought me back as a retiree to work typically like one day a week during the summer months to lead bull run tours like this. And the reason why is that I worked my entire career on programs and projects associated with the bull run, so I know it kind of like the back of my hand. I've walked almost every creek and river in that watershed. I've driven every road in the watershed. I've done pretty much anything you could possibly imagine doing in the bull run. I've done it. So not always really well, but I've done it. So over the course of my career, I wore probably about 12 different hats, you know, figuratively. I have a bachelor's degree in forest management. I have a master's in forest hydrology.
Wow.
So at the time I was hired in 1984, it was a good fit. There was quite a bit of forest management activity going on in the bull run in the mid-1980s. When I say forest management, I mean like logging and road construction and thinning, things like that, slash burning. So it was a good fit for them at the time, and but over the decades, my role kind of evolved as circumstances changed. And so, for example, in any one moment, I was the Water Bureau's forester, their ecologist, their wetland specialist, their wildlife biologist. I oversaw the very first fishery study in the bull run. I was their archaeologist. I did work on cultural resources in the watershed. I did environmental permitting. I did long-range planning. I did geographic information systems. I'm probably leaving out about 3 or 4 things, but I guess the point is that I guess there's danger in being kind of an inch deep and a mile wide, because if you do things very poorly, they'll replace you with specialists who do a really good job in each one of those specialties, and they'll encourage you to retire to get the heck out of there. So our bus driver this morning is Joe Ramirez. This is only, I think maybe it's like his 3rd time driving, but he's done an excellent job so far. So Joe's been with the Water Bureau for 2 years. Before that, he worked about 8 years for was it 8 years for a water utility in Dallas, Texas. So he has about a decade of experience in working for a water utility. He works on the North District Maintenance Group, but he also does field support. It's called field support for the Water Bureau Maintenance and Construction Group. So I work in, from an organizational standpoint, what's called the Resource Protection and Planning Group of the Water Bureau. It's one of 7 major groups. The other major groups are finance, administration, engineering services, maintenance and construction, operations. I think those are the major groups. So my group is what people like to call the ologist. So we're kind of the bugs and bunny people. We're the wildlife biologists, fish biologists, hydrologists, ecologists. So they call us the ologists or the tree huggers, as opposed to the engineering group, which tend to be a little more engineering focused. And then within the resource protection group, we have kind of subgroups. So I work in what's called the education subgroup of the resource protection group. And it's not a PR group, it's not public relations, it's purely education. And that's the way that we focus on our tours. This is an educational opportunity, not a public relations situation. Our goal is to educate the ratepayers as much as possible about the Northern water system and about the Bull Run watershed, information so that you can cast your vote in an educated way. Or if you want to write a letter to City Council so that you can weigh in on an issue by virtue of knowing something about the Bull Run watershed and the water system. I can tell you just a few things about the bus. So the Water Bureau purchased this bus in 2005. It's really worked out well to have our own bus and our own bus driver. Prior to that, we relied on contractors to take us to the watershed on a contract bus. And that's challenging because they don't know the route there, they don't know the road system within the watershed, they don't know where the stops are that we stop for our tours. So it's worked out really well to have our in-house drivers take us to the watershed for the tours. There are 2 water containers on board the bus. If you look at the back of the aisle, there's a yellow 5-gallon jug that has fresh water in it. There's a similar sized water container in the very back of the bus in the external cabinet. So if you brought a water bottle, feel free to refill your bottle today. There's a trash can at the back end of the aisle. There's also a trash can right here at the entry door. Don't worry about separating your recyclable from the non-recyclable trash. We can do that for you at the end of the day. There is a restroom at the back of the bus. However, we can't use it. And the reason why is that the watershed is operated under the terms of a very strict variance that was granted to us by the Oregon Health Administration, OHA, and that's tied to a federal and a state rule about cryptosporidium. Cryptosporidium is a very microscopic parasitic protozoan, about 4 microns in diameter. So if you think of a human hair is about 100 microns in diameter, and so this critter, which is a protozoan, is 1/20th the diameter of a human hair. But nevertheless, it can cause dysentery in humans if it is there in a waterborne situation. We've never had a waterborne outbreak of cryptosporidiosis, which is the disease caused by cryptosporidium. However, the most prominent sources of cryptosporidium is either wildlife or livestock or human sewage. So we don't have livestock in the watershed. We don't have human sewage in the watershed. However, we do have wildlife. We can't do anything about where they go to the bathroom, but we can do something about where humans use restrooms. We're required to have what's called secondary containment below any kind of portable restroom in the Bull Run. And since the bus has a restroom and it's portable, basically, we would need to have some kind of a steel structure below that restroom to be able to contain any kind of a spill if a spill happens. What else can I tell you about the bus? We have, there's a Tupperware here which has like field guides, like wildlife field guides. There's a book that has some interesting photos of the Bull Run watershed dating back to the late 1800s, early 1900s. We used to have a set of binoculars. I'm not sure if we still have those on board the bus. So chances are we're going to see some wildlife today. The last couple tours I've been on, we've seen deer, we've seen bear, black bear. It's very common to see grouse. We've seen bald eagles, we've seen osprey, we've seen red-tailed hawk. So if you enjoy seeing wildlife, I think you should be in luck today. So the one thing we need audience participation on the bus is the heating and the cooling system. So the airflow is such that sometimes people in the very back can be too warm, the people in the front can be too cold, or vice versa. So don't hesitate to shout out if you feel like you're uncomfortable. Yeah. What's that? Too cold back here? Okay. Look here. Turn the AC down. So here's our agenda for the day. As you can see, we're getting off at the Marine Drive exit in Troutdale. We're going to cut over to Highway 26, drive up to Zigzag Ranger Station. We'll take a brief restroom stop there. I'd like to stop no more than about 10 minutes at Zigzag Ranger Station. How many folks have been to Zigzag Ranger Station?
I've been
about maybe
by it at least.
Okay. They have a brand new restaurant facility. They have a really nice visitor center. So one of our constraints today is that we almost had to cancel this tour because the guy who was going to drive had a serious back injury. He's out all week, and so Joe very kindly stepped in. And so he didn't know until he showed up at work this morning that he was going to drive the bus. But he has an important activity he needs to take care of, a work-related activity, beginning at 4:15 back at his field office. So that means we need to be back at the Hollywood Fred Meyer absolutely no later than 4 o'clock. So I'm going to really need your help. So when I say to folks, hey, we've got 10 minutes for restroom break, we're going to have to really hold to that schedule. And same thing for the restroom break, for the lunch break. If give us, for example, half an hour, 35 minutes, let's really try and be back on the bus by the time that I announce. So anyway, so we're going to head up Highway 26 to Zigzag. We're going to then turn left and go in a northeasterly direction up Lolo Pass Road. That road follows the southeastern boundary of the Bull Run closure area for about a 4-mile distance. Then we're going to come in a gate on the eastern boundary of the Bull Run. Our first stop will be about a 1-mile round-trip hike. It goes through a beautiful old-growth forest down to a natural spring. And I think you guys will really enjoy the hike. It's a very easy hike. It's only about maybe a 3 or 4% grade. So we've taken people in their mid-80s and they have no problems on this trail.
92 yesterday.
Yeah, so Joe said he drove the bus yesterday. There was a 92-year-old person on the tour, and they did fine on the trails. So from there, we will get back on the bus, and it's just a quick 5-minute drive from that trailhead up to Bull Run Lake, which is just a beautiful lake with a gorgeous view of Mount Hood. There's 3 rustic cabins that are 100 years old. They were built in 1917. So you'll get to sit on the porch of a cabin that's 100 years old and gaze out on the lake and look at Mount Hood and enjoy your lunch. And at that stop, so I'll turn people loose. If you want to quickly down your lunch and then wander around and take photos, you're welcome to do that as long as we're back in the bus by the designated time. Then we're going to head west, and we're going to visit the 2 dams in the Bull Run. There's a concrete dam built in 1929 and then an earth-fill dam built in 1962. We'll go on a tour of both of the dams. And then following touring the second dam, we're going to drive past what's called headworks, and that's where water is chlorinated and it enters the 3 large pipelines that sends water to town.
So cool.
So we normally include a final stop in the late afternoon, and that's we stop on a bridge that's located about 2.5 miles downstream of our intake, and that's a section of the Bull Run River that is still open to anadromous fish. So when I say anadromous, I'm talking about salmon and steelhead. So these are fish that spend part of their life cycle in freshwater and part in salt water. So that lower 6 miles of the river is still open to salmon and steelhead runs. It's a really fun place to take people, but we won't have time today just because of the time constraint. What I'd like to do is we have a map, and we can connect that to some Velcro tabs here, and that helps kind of geographically orient you about where the Bull Run is, where the geographic boundaries of our service area and so forth. So I'm just going to pause for a second and put up that map just to help kind of orient us.